I hate running.
What are you doing today, Dallas?
Running.
Are you ready for the hill?
I think so. I'm not sure how ready I'll be after 12K. So this hill is about 12K into the run, and it's the first hill. You come down the big hill by Groat, and then you run flat until you hit the Walterdale Bridge, and then it's this. And this is the biggest amount of elevation gain in the whole run, and it's the steepest hill, and I didn't know it existed. I've ran the hills around here, but I've never ran up this hill before.
I was 4 months into being a father, sitting on the couch, watching Mr. Joseph Rogan on the YouTube, holding my son, and I realized that I was using being with my son as an excuse not to exercise. And Joseph was talking with a ultra marathon swimmer that would swim between the islands on Hawaii. And they were talking about the mental discipline it takes to wake up early enough to avoid the ships and swimming in the dark in the direction of an island. And I was just sitting there thinking, what am I doing? And so what I realized was that I needed to do something to create mental discipline. And so I immediately wrote down a list of things that I hate doing. I wrote running. I wrote down lifting weights. I wrote down not eating way too much. And I decided right then and there that I was going to run Monday, Wednesday, Friday. No excuses. And I decided I was going to start lifting weights Tuesdays, Thursdays, unless I couldn't lift weights on a certain day. And I'll let you guess which ones I've kept up with. So when I started running, it wasn't because I wanted to lose weight. It wasn't because I wanted to run far. It wasn't because I wanted to be fit. It was because I wanted to be mentally disciplined in something.
Dallas has talked about before, when he was in junior high, how driven he was. How he would hold his breath and almost pass out trying to do backflips underwater. And he had this incredible mental resilience. And I remember him talking probably before he started running, how he wished that he had that. He kind of lost that in adulthood. So I think he just tapped back into something that he had before and was missing.
We talked about it, how there's just this, not a rule out there, but most people stop at 40% of their capacity. Right? They're not even halfway, and people quit because they just think it's too hard and they don't actually test what their body's limit is.
The idea of doing something hard that you don't like doing is really admirable, and I think it's inspiring.
Why is it inspiring?
Because that's human nature, is to take the easy way out. And we become stronger people through adversity and through trials. And life throws enough of those at us to be able to develop our character. And we have the choice to use it to make us stronger or weaker. But to choose voluntarily to do something to do that, I think is pretty cool.
If he inherited it from one of us, it would be from his father, not from me. Because Brad sticks to something when he wants to get it and he's almost got it, he sticks to it. And I'm like, that's hard. I'll quit now. So I don't like that. I mean, I love that they do it. I love that attitude.
I've been at this for 13 months maybe, 13 or 14. And I've missed 3 days. 2 of them are because I was just Friday doing something late, working or playing board games with some friends, and then I'd wake up on the Saturday morning. This happened twice. I woke up on Saturday morning and went, oh no, and immediately out of bed into my running shoes and running. So I made up for those 2 days. But the other day I missed was when I was in the hospital with kidney stones. And we got back from the hospital at 12:43. So I'd missed my run day by 43 minutes. So I put on my shoes and ran out the door and ran a really slow 1.5 kilometers because I was in a little bit of pain at the time.
Yeah, maybe not the smartest decision, but I think it was kind of cool that he doesn't let himself have those excuses because, again, giving his personality, he's on or he's off, and I think he's getting better at turning that on when he needs to.
We learned today the path I had planned is closed. So we did a similar distance. I have an alternate path, but it's not near as nice. It's not as pretty. It's not in the river valley. But I at least now have 5K, so I have 13K left to track.
All right, Dallas. Everyone's dying to know. Why the mustache?
Weight training.
What do you mean?
If I come to the marathon and I'm like, I can't do it, shave it off, it'll be easy.
Gearing up for the first half marathon. I'd been running for about 6 or 7 months, and I wanted to push some longer distances. So I worked up to 5 kilometers, worked up to 6 kilometers, worked up to 7, and they seemed really far. 7 kilometers was a third of what I had to do. And these were really pushing it for me. And then I wanted to do a run from my house to my place of work. And it's about 9 kilometers. And so I planned to, I either got a ride or I parked my car at work the night before, and I set out to run to work. And I timed myself, and it was a long, arduous process, but I did it. And I think it was 57 minutes, like high 50s. And if you know running times for 9 kilometers, that's so slow. And so I did that twice before my first half marathon. And I told my friend and I told Lindsay that it was going to be easy. And part of it was tongue-in-cheek, but I truly thought that it was going to be easy in that I knew I could do it. But I knew really all I would have to do was try hard. And trying hard is easy. So I said it was easy. And then I went and did my run. And thank goodness it was a cool, cool day. You could see your breath at the start line. So I didn't overheat. They had water stations on the path. Everything was clearly marked. And so I ran. I kept doing these check-ins with myself. And there wasn't a point where I ever went, I'm not sure I can do this. At every point I went, I feel good. I can keep this up. And it was way longer than I ever imagined. I ran it in an hour 53 or an hour 57 or something. So I ran it in under 2 hours, which was a huge accomplishment for me, especially considering that I had ran 9K in about 57 minutes previously as a personal record, as a personal best. And so something about the race environment just kind of spurred me on.
So when you found out Dallas ran his first half marathon, what did you think?
I'm thinking, what the heck? Where did this come from? Like, I knew he didn't like running. I hate running. And all of a sudden, what? And he's pretty committed to climbing. And all of a sudden, he's now running, which is good. I thought maybe, Lindsay's influence was there because she was a runner. So, and that's cool. And I thought, oh, wow, that's great. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be harder than it was for him, because he wasn't really training consistently leading up to it. So when he came back and said that he did it in sub 2 hours and had done very little training beforehand, I was surprised, and yeah, just not jealous, but things come to him pretty easily sometimes. And so to do that little training and still do so well, I was like, ugh.
So after the half, I realized that having a goal like that was really helpful. And this is nothing new. They've studied goal setting for eons. But I really noticed that when I had something to strive for, I strove, if that's a word. And so I said, well, the next is a marathon.
So my run today didn't feel great. I'm obviously tired, and starting out the run, I felt really lethargic. But I think that potentially it had to do with the fact that I was wearing the watch. We decided to wear the watch today because I need to know exactly how far each section of the run is so that I know how far the whole thing is. But because I was tracking it with numbers, I was keeping a tab on it as I was going. And I think I felt worse because I thought I should be running faster. And I don't know why that makes such a big difference. I never run with a watch, so I don't know how fast I run. But I think that's why I don't. As soon as I start attaching my value based on the numbers that I produce, I'm losing sight on what I really want to focus on. So I'm glad that I don't generally run with a watch because I'm not doing it for numbers. I'm not running fast enough for it to mean anything. But it was really interesting that I thought I ran worse today, and maybe the only difference was that I had a watch.
Why do you run in short shorts but no shirt?
Dress for the body you want, not the body you have.
Memorable running experiences. After that, I asked Lindsay if she wanted to ever run a half. And I was surprised when she said yes. And she was excited about it. I wasn't surprised because she was so quick to agree to do the half marathon. I was surprised because she does so many things. And a lot of her athletic career was focused on really short, explosive exercises. And so she's not built for a half marathon either. And she had a kid, and so she was starting from scratch. But after my half, I asked her, and she said she'd love to. And so I started training for running in February, because that's when she was going to do her half marathon. And if you've ever been in Edmonton in February, you know that it is absolute Arctic. And it's cold. It's pretty cold.
I don't think I could have done it without Dallas, because I don't know, I didn't have that, especially with long distance running, that ability to push myself into that pain for a long period. Because I tried to do, I think I did about a 17K by myself before, and I let myself walk the hills.
I guess the biggest test for me was when we had minus 39 degrees Celsius. So it was cold. It was really, really cold that day. And I ran to work. I put on my gear, I put on a little bit extra, and I ran along a bus path. So if I ever had to bail onto a bus, I could get on a bus and be totally fine. So there was very little risk, I thought. And I ran it, and I was relatively warm, and I finished and got to work, and my hands were cold, and otherwise I was totally fine. So that was kind of a surreal run for me. But then actually doing the half marathon was amazing. Doing it with Lindsay. Doing it by myself was one thing, but doing it with my wife was so rewarding. And knowing that we put in the time together and we trained together and pushed Caleb together, it brought us closer together in our marriage, all that time working and suffering together. And then being able to come and challenge a race like that together, it's amazing.
When I'm with Dallas, he is really good at being able to push me, but not in like a really motivating way. So I want to run and I want to be able to do it in a good time. And having him there is really motivating, more so than when I run by myself. So yeah, I don't think I could do it without him, but it was really rewarding to do it with him.
Caleb, are you happy?
Happy.
Are we gonna run with Daddy?
Daddy.
We did about 7 or 8 kilometers Christmas morning. And my sisters woke up early to take care of Caleb, and my wife and I got to go and watch the sunrise on Christmas morning, 3.5, 4 kilometers from the house, sitting on top of a hill overlooking the North Saskatchewan River. And moments like that have brought me so much closer and maybe grounded me to the places that I'm running. We'll drive by places now and I'll know little weird details. I'll know there's some graffiti on that wall that you can't see when you're driving. I'll know that, last time I was there, I passed a dog that was peeing and it sticks in my mind for some reason. It's kind of interesting how grounded running puts you in all of these places.
So how'd your run go today?
Not good.
Why?
It was really hard. My knee hurt. I was really tired. I felt slow. I was really tired. I hated it.
So I am needling Dallas's quad because he has a muscle imbalance where the outside of his quad is really tight, partly because his glute med, or one of his hip muscles, is weak. So as he's running, his knee dips inwards, and that causes tightness of this muscle, and it causes his kneecap to tilt to the outside. So it's called patellofemoral syndrome or runner's knee. So you are a true runner now, Dallas.
Great.
You have to strengthen your glute med muscle and train the way that you're running. Oh, that's good in there. So that your knee doesn't dip in while you run.
How do I strengthen my glute med?
So lots of different ways. So the glute med does hip abduction or abduction, which is moving away from the body. So you want to make sure that you're not compensating with your TFL. So you want to do hip abduction with a little bit of internal rotation of hip. So you can do isolated exercises for the glute med, like the clamshell. You can do side shuffles or side walking with a band around your hips. One of the best exercises
Around your hips?
Around your knees. And one of the best exercises for the glute med is to make sure you're engaging your glute with exercises like squats and lunges to make sure that you're having that proper patellar tracking and you're engaging your glute during those exercises to train the proper patterns for when you run.
This hurts. This hurts a lot.
Dallas, was it look easy for you when you started to run?
Heck no. No, it was actually really hard. I started running a kilometer and a half, kind of as the max distance. And I slowly worked up to about 4K. And I distinctly remember having this complex almost, because I had lots of friends that would post about their 5K, 10K jogs. And it was people I knew that weren't that fit. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I went to my wife and I said, how are people running this far that easily? How can anyone just go and run for a 5K jog? And I go and I die trying to complete 4K. And she kind of laughed at me and said, oh, they're not running the whole way, Dallas. And I said, what? That's not running a 5K. And so I guess the moral of the story is running is hard. And when you start out, it feels hard. And everyone makes it look like it's easy. And it's really not. And so go and walk half of it. Or run and then stop and sit and look over the river. Do what you need to do to make it possible. And then incrementally extend that distance, and then 5K does become something that you can do in one go. It is something you could just walk out and do. But it did not start out that way. It started out really hard.
So, my goal is to run the Edmonton Marathon, the Calgary Marathon, and then I might have gotten a little overzealous. And I planned on running a 50K in Canmore, so in the mountains, with Colton. And then COVID hit. And I didn't stop running, but it was very different. I would run 400 meters just to check a box. And that happened for a couple months. And then it started being nice out. And I went, okay, well, I need to get back on the horse. I need to have a goal. I need to make this happen. And so I messaged Colton and I said, all right, let's combine the two ideas. We're not going to do the ultra, and I've been off the horse for a while, so let's make something a little bit more reasonable. Let's do marathon distance, but include some hills. So it'll be harder than the Edmonton or the Calgary Marathon, but it won't be as hard as the Canmore Ultra Marathon. And so I started really training for this marathon that I'm going to run in the middle of August in May. So May, June, July, 3 months to prepare. And I hadn't stopped running, the volume of running had really diminished, so I had to build up that volume. So I started running longer, hit that 6K, hit that 7K. It felt really, really hard at first. And gradually those 6 and 7Ks became easier and easier, pushed it to 10K. And then my weekly values were starting to go up as well. Last week was my last week at 30 kilometers. This week is a 40-kilometer week. And I have some goals to help me achieve that as well. I want to run the equivalent of 250 meters of elevation gain in one go, but without all the flat. Okay? I want to kind of do that much height stepping up onto this bench. I want to run some intervals. I want to do these things to help prepare me for this marathon distance. I've been feeling really intimidated by the distance, to be honest, especially considering that there are 4 big hills equaling 250 meters of elevation gain. And that's been really good for me, I think, because it's caused me to force myself to hit my distances. I've been running hills virtually every day that I run because I'm intimidated that this 42K or the marathon distance is going to kick my butt. And so because of that worry, because of that intimidation, I've been preparing.
Knowing that you were training with him made a big difference in his ability to push through, make the decision to run that hill versus not run that hill. But now you're not running with him.
Yeah.
So
No,
speak to
I
that.
know it sucks. I actually feel very like guilty. Guilty is a great word for it, because that's what I feel. I mean, I've since I moved back, I've like put on 15 pounds, and I know he's still like putting in work.
So the 10K run today turned into an 11K run with a massive set of stairs. And that's not the end of the world. I just want to see how it fits with everything else. On the one hand, I hate stairs. But on the other hand, no excuses, right? That's why I'm here. So maybe that's part of the plan now. We'll look at the whole thing, and if that extra kilometer pushes it past the goal, then maybe we relook at it. But after that, I found maybe my favorite part of the run so far. I'd never been on it before, and it was just this dirt trail with trees, and then I finished it off by hitting this bridge. I love bridges. So this bridge is about the halfway mark. For what we've ran in the last couple of days, it's 21 kilometers. If we work out that little blip, maybe it'll come out to about 20. So it's on either end of the halfway mark for the whole thing, and that's really exciting. So. I'm a little bit nervous. My knees are really tight because all I did yesterday was play Skyrim.
I think this whole race can be summed up with the decision I have to make when I get to this fork. The left is easy. The right is just probably 300 meters longer. It goes around. Do I take the easy way or the hard way? It's not a choice.
When I run, I don't make decisions because they're easy. If the choice is to run a hill or not run a hill, the goal is mental discipline. There's no choice at that point. And that doesn't mean I succeed every time, but it certainly makes the choice easier.
I feel like it's a gradual thing that has come on him as an adult. Like when Dad and I talked to him about his work or about what his goals are, he really is goal oriented, and once he sees something, he's very good at saying, if I want this, I need to do these steps on the way to it, and we both love that about him, and that's part of his success, because he's so aware of what he needs to do to accomplish his goals, and we love that.
Yet again, talking about how a lot of feats of, athletic ability and athletic strength or anything along those lines really does come back down to if people are willing to put in work. If you put in work, you're going to be good at something. You might not be the absolute best in the world at it, but there's a lot of these like monikers and standards that we have as human beings that we've placed out there, like being able to run a marathon or the 4-minute mile or all these kinds of things that at one point in time people thought was nearly impossible to do. But all of a sudden some people start training for it and they break that barrier, and as soon as a barrier gets broken, it's doable, right? And then all of a sudden hundreds of thousands of people start doing it.
My goal is to run the marathon distance in 4 hours. That is twice the world record. That's double. There's a human being who can run twice as fast as I can in half the time. That's extraordinary. And there are parents of kids that their main thing is being a doctor, and they're able to run these marathons in blistering speeds, enough to qualify for major marathons. No, if there's one thing that I think someone can take away from this, is that I'm not doing anything extraordinary at all. It's just that I'm doing it. People don't run marathons because they don't try.
I think that's a good question, and I think we as human beings can do much more than we think we can. And I think definitely there's people that are more determined than others. There's people that have a higher tolerance for pain than others. There's people who give up sooner when they're doing hard things. But there's a range, I think, within that I think almost anybody can do more than they think they can.
Right, so to just be able to complete a marathon, whether it's based on like a time, just the distance component of it, the distance component of a marathon isn't unfeasible for almost anybody in the general population. The difference is when people just say I can't versus some people that say I will. Right? And that's all it comes down to. You don't have to be the most talented person to run a marathon. You just have to do it. And convincing yourself that you can do it is probably 90% of the battle.
And then even everyone's different, right? Everyone's hard is different. For me, it's going to be running this marathon. And maybe, who knows, maybe it's more. But for some people, running a marathon isn't hard. And running 100 miles is what's hard for them. And for some people, running 10 kilometers might be hard. It doesn't matter. Find the hard and make no excuses.
So I hope that this is what the documentary does for other people, is that it inspires them to find those areas of weaknesses and push themselves and just say, there's no reason why I can't do that. If I want to do something and change my life, I have the power to do it. I just need to be consistent with it. So, yeah.
I think the no excuses thing is really what makes it work.
I've been making excuses and things like that, and I know that if we were in the same like somewhat community right now, he'd be just kicking my butt and just lighting a fire under me to like get after it. It's just these are like weird times that I can, and maybe both of us can rationalize an excuse for it, right? And that's a dangerous place, right? Because when you start rationalizing excuses, you start quitting at 40%.
The no excuses mean no excuses. And once you start making excuses, it's easier to continue making excuses. So no excuses.
So this last kilometer is kind of cool for me because it's the last kilometer to my childhood home. And so we're hitting this intersection by the river, and we spent a fair bit of time there as kids. My brother fell into the river here, and we ended up hopping on a log and floating for 15 minutes, starting hopefully what is a tradition where we float on the river in the summer. And that was years ago that he fell in. It is also where my grandfather would take us on sled rides in the winter and wagon rides for hot dog roasts in the summer. There's a little campfire by the river. When I was older and a teenager, my friends and I would go and explore the wilderness by the gravel path, now nicely paved. And then we go from that intersection with all those memories, and I literally run to my childhood home to finish. So that's kind of cool.
It looks so weird.
Why are you doing this?
For K-tape. And your legs are too hairy to take the athletic support. Now I can wear dresses.
We'll see it. Wow. Do you think he's going to be able to do it?
Oh yeah, I don't have any doubt.
If there was anything that would hinder him from doing it, what do you think it would be?
Like extreme pain. A little bit of pain won't stop him.
Yeah, 100%. Even if he has to like limp and crawl like across the finish line, like that's what he's gonna do. Barring him having, something pop in both feet, I really do think that he's going to just absolutely like crush through it. It's going to be one of those things where he set his mind to it, and it's just going to get done.
So do you think Dallas is going to successfully complete his marathon next weekend?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Because he said he's going to, and I think he'll do it or die trying, because that's the type of person he is.
For me, like just knowing the times that I've run by myself, I think there's going to be a huge mental block like halfway through. Running a marathon, there's not been too many people who run a marathon by themselves. I guess some people who do ultra kind of do it as training, but I think it's a lot more motivating when you're surrounded by people and you're trying to let that other person pass you. And I know that he's talked about that in other races, like not wanting to let other people pass him or trying to pass other people. So I think not having that immediate motivation is going to be hard for him. So I don't think the time will be stellar based on that, but I think that he will definitely complete that. And given the way that I've seen him push himself, I still think it's going to be a pretty good time. But I think it's just easier to push yourself when there's other people around.
I think just insurmountable pain is the only thing that would keep you from. I think you're more determined to finish than any other personality trait that would stop you from it. I think your determination would overpower anything that would stop you.
He might surprise himself and crush his pace goal. The other option is that it might take up to double the amount of time, but the guy's going to finish it. If he doesn't, then I'm just going to, have to hold it over his head that, like, maybe his brain isn't that smart and maybe not that resilient, but I really do think that barring something, like, catastrophically happening, he's going to absolutely give everything he's got. And, like I said, if he has to walk across the finish line, he'll walk it, but he's not going to not get those kilometers.
So what's tomorrow?
Tomorrow is Saturday.
What are you doing tomorrow?
I'm going to run a marathon.
How are you feeling?
Apprehensive. I'm worried about the knee pain. I'm worried that the run will be harder than it should have been if I would have just taken care of my body ahead of time. But I know that at the end of the day, I have this marathon to run. And I've put in a bunch of work, and it's going to end up how it ends up. The only thing I can do now is do it. Bear down, do it. So I'm nervous. I'm trying not to think about it, but I'm excited. I'm super excited. Maybe excited to get it over with. Maybe excited to be done so I don't have this looming over my head. I have so much energy inside of me. I've been trying to avoid thinking about it. But I know I'm gonna have so much trouble sleeping tonight. Like, what if I just wake up at 5? I know I'm not gonna go back to bed. I might as well start running.
Mommy.
What am I gonna do? Be awake for an hour?
Oh, this is gorgeous. You ready to go? When you wake up enough to poop.
That's good temperature.
There has to be a certain wakeness to poop.
You have to wake up the cold.
Yeah.
You know, make things warm up in there.
And Caleb started screaming at 3:57.
Oh, no.
That's when Matthew went to bed. Screaming?
I kept saying, "What's wrong, buddy? What's wrong?" He was saying, "Up. There's obviously something wrong. You can't sleep."
He was nervous for you.
I think he had a stomachache or something. Maybe.
Did you have breakfast, Matt?
Yeah.
Dallas, how you feeling?
You want some
Dallas.
chicken nuggets?
Where did you get chicken nuggets?
Kitty up. You want some chicken nuggets?
How's your knee?
Oh, that's
I'm good.
great. This is just mental
he's
support.
Good. He doesn't want it.
Yeah, I'll grab McDonald's or something.
Okay.
Are you wearing a tank top already?
Ah, roasted.
My first kilometer was fast. Not like the fastest kilometer I've ever ran, but for starting out a marathon, I was moving at a clip that was not sustainable. It wasn't ridiculous. It was just a little quicker than I had planned because I was excited and I had all the energy in the world. And that was good. And I ran this path that I'd ran to work many, many times, so I knew exactly where I was going. The first major checkpoint on the run is Southgate Mall. And this is where I first saw the crew after leaving my house. And it was Jason, Matt, and they were super excited. And I had this huge rush of adrenaline when I saw them. I was so happy to see them. And we talked a little bit before the marathon. How often do I want people with me? How long do I want them with me? That kind of thing. And my response was, well, I want to have checkpoints, but I don't want them with me the whole time. And seeing them there it was probably after 4 kilometers of running, seeing them was so exciting. And they were on bikes and they were excited and they were talking to me and it was so fun. And then I was into the next leg of the race. And I knew that I had another 4.5 kilometers before the next checkpoint. But then disaster struck. At about 7K, just before 7K, my camelback that had all my water for the run broke.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It blocked.
Oh, threw you out?
A smaller than water bottle cup of water at every spot.
Okay.
And Rachel was there, and all I had to do was say, my water broke, I need water at the check stops. And she suddenly jumped into action. I mean, I'm running, I don't notice this, but she jumps into action and organizes a check stop it was probably every 4K with water. And that is the only way I was able to finish this thing. And that's just a fun challenge that we didn't anticipate, and thankfully I didn't have to worry about it. Then I run down through the university, gorgeous part of the run on campus, run down the hill, going down Grote, and that was the first downhill section. And that was what I was really worried about, was those downhill sections, because that's when my knees would start hurting. But it felt fine. So I hit that. I ran down to River Valley Road, ran along the river, and it was gorgeous. It was really interesting because last time I ran that path, I was already aware that the hill was coming and I was nervous. And at this point, I'm more focused on the idea that I hope they have water for me before I hit this hill. And right before the Walter Dale Bridge, there was Matt with water, and Jace was riding his bike, getting some footage, and he hands me the water. I slam it back, tastes a little bit like coffee because he had drained his coffee cup to give me some water. And that's all I needed to do. I drank it, I tossed it back to them, and ran across the Walter Dale Bridge and was feeling really, really good. I was feeling fast, I was feeling competent, and then the first hill, right? The Kinsman Hill was the first big test, and we were worried about my knees, and
this was going to be kind of a litmus test to see how I was going to feel for the rest of the run. And I went up the hill and it felt great. It felt absolutely great. And when I got to the top, I was tired, but I made really good time up the hill and I recovered really quickly after that. And that's always the biggest encouragement, is getting to the top of the hill, feeling tired, but then, you know, in 15 paces, feeling like you can get back to pace. So that was really encouraging. I was done the first quarter of the race, a little over the first quarter of the race, and I was feeling excellent. I hit Saskatchewan Drive next and ran on the high side of the river valley. It's overlooking the river valley. You overlook the Walter Dale, you overlook downtown. It's where a lot of the really nice pictures of Edmonton are taken from. And I was flying for me. I was moving pretty quick, and that it felt so good. And so I'm still just feeling amazing. And I wasn't anticipating seeing anyone again until kilometer 21. And unbeknownst to me, Rachel had added one to get me some water. And there's this wackadoo with a bike yelling at me. I don't even remember what they were yelling.
You're doing awesome! Your pace is so good!
And it took me probably a good 30 seconds before I realized it was Rachel. And she's jazzed because my time is really good. And so I go under the bridge, go up the stairs, circle around. She has extra water for me, which was excellent. Gave me some encouragement. Feeling good, not fatigued. And so I go into the section by the river, and that leads to that uphill stair section by where the Dragon Boat Festival is held. And I went up there, felt great, and rolled back down this big hill. Knees felt fine by the river, and transition onto trails by the river. And this is one of my favorite sections of the run. It's this gravelly trail that has slight hills here and there by the river, and it's like really densely populated with trees, and it feels like you're in nature, away from the road, even though, 10 meters to the left of you there is a road, you just can't see it. And I hit that and I felt fantastic. So the Riverside Golf Course is the halfway mark of the run, and I had gotten to the 21.1K mark and I was sub 2 hours, and I had ran two official half marathons before this run, but the fastest I'd ever ran that half marathon time was just under 2 hours. And I'm in my marathon, I'm trying to conserve energy, and I had done 2 massive uphill sections, including a set of stairs. And I got to the halfway mark and was on track for my fastest half marathon time. And it didn't feel like I was pushing too hard. It didn't feel like I was pushing it. But at every point up until now, meeting people was invigorating because they were excited. They had water for me. They were full of energy, and I was able to absorb some of that. And so this moment halfway through the run where I'm under time, not feeling like I'm pushing too hard, no pain in my knees, I'm getting water, and I have people that are psyched. That's the feeling I remember when I think back about this half marathon. And it's just so cool. And it's what I want to remember when I think of this half marathon, or when I think of this marathon. And that moment was probably the best feeling moment in the whole thing, was getting to the halfway mark. Everyone's psyched. I'm feeling really good, really positive, and I'm about to go into what is my favorite section of the run. This next section of the run is really cool. I run into this single trail right beside a golf course, and it's really close to the river, and it's gorgeous, and you have this grass whipping past your feet, and so it feels like you're going fast. And this was the section that linked everything together. It was the one part of the whole section that I had only done once, and we weren't confident about it. And when we figured out where the path was originally, there was part of the path that was crumbling, and the retaining wall was falling and the path had sunk into the ground. It was kind of a disaster. Anyway, so we had ran this path already. We knew it was a little bit gnarly, but we knew it was easily doable. What we didn't anticipate is that the city would be fixing it. And so when I got to this place on my day of the run, there were big fences blocking the path that said something about no entry. I don't really remember. I went past it too quickly. And there was nothing changed from when we were there. Just the fences were up. They hadn't started construction or anything. And I zipped through it as quickly as I could. And I was not the only one to disobey the signs. There was another couple that were running through there at the time. And it wasn't too long before I busted out of there and went under the Wayne Gretzky Bridge. And that leads into probably the most difficult section of the run. And it's all mountain biking trails. So it's runnable, but it's up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. And there are switchbacks and lots of quick, steep downhill sections, and it ends with a steep uphill section. That uphill section was really trying for me when I did it initially. It was where my knee started hurting, the bad time, the worst time. Coming out of all this up and down was where I was concerned, but I come out of this uphill section and I'm tired, but I'm feeling good. My body's obviously getting more tired, and I'm slowing down. My average kilometer is going slower and slower, but I'm not feeling exhausted. I'm feeling like I can totally do this. I might have even had that 4-hour marker in my mind still. And then I go down this long gradual downhill into the gazebo is what we call it, because there's a gazebo, and Jason and Matt come bounding over the side, and they're running and jumping, and they get on this track with me, and this is another mountain biking track, but it's really flat, and they're riding with me, and I don't know how far they're going, but we're just excited, and so I get a little burst of energy. And thankfully they had come in and repaired one section of it when we went through with the bike. Originally Rachel had to get off and push, and that was all nicely groomed, and so this section was actually nicer, and that put me into Gold Bar Park, and I basically ran this dirt trail by the river all the way till Rundle. It started feeling long here. I still felt good, but things were slowing down, and it's a wonderful part of the run, but I'm not focusing on that at this point. I'm starting to focus on how tired I feel. And when I cross the bridge into Rundle, I'm with Rachel, and she's trying to lift my spirits. She can tell I'm getting tired, but I'm still making really good time. So my spirits are still high. I'm still feeling positive, but I'm getting much slower. And I just came through the hardest section, so it makes sense. But Rundle is gorgeous, and so I run through Rundle Park, and despite not having super fast times at this point, like I'm in the high 6s at this point, I think. It's a very pleasant part of the run. And I had water at the beginning, and then I get water at the end of Rundle Park as well, which is really nice. And at the very end of Rundle Park is this hill. And it's not the biggest hill, but it's this steep, switchbacky type of hill. And that's where I first started feeling like, oh, I'm in the end. I'm in the last bit where I'm going to start, shutting down. And I've never hit a wall, and I hear people talk about hitting the wall. And this wasn't it, but this was a poetic foreshadowing of the wall that was to come. It was the second last major hill, third last hill, and I had to grind it out. I had to just put my head down and get to the top. And Brad's trying to keep up with me on the bike, and by keep up with me, he's trying to stay behind me to film, but I'm going too slow, and so it's the opposite of keep up. He's trying to keep back with me. And as I crest the top, I get a wonderful little distraction, because I know that these guys are leapfrogging with their cars to try and get me water, and I see them like screech around and pull up into the parking spot, and I see Jace casually get out and stretch and then look down the path towards where I'll be coming from and see me. I go, oh, and starts hitting the car and saying, I'm assuming he's coming, he's here. And so Matt hops out and they get their cameras ready and start running with me and get me the water that I so desperately need at that point. And this was the first point I felt like I needed the water. And this was the first part after a hill where I didn't get it back very quickly. And the section after this hill is the biggest difference in elevation on the whole thing. It's downhill the whole way, but it is steep and long. But my knees start legitimately hurting as I'm going through this downhill section. And it's quite long, and I'm trying to adjust the way I run just to stay off the pain as long as I can. And this was a little bit worrying, but I knew that it was my last major downhill section. But I'm still, 11K out at this point? And so grinding 11K with sore knees is not fun. And so I was just trying to keep it together. Hit the bottom of the hill. I went under the Yellowhead and under the Yellowhead Bridge and the train bridge. And it's this amazing part of the run. And you go under this giant bridge section with like 3 or 4 bridges if you include the train bridge. And you break into this really nice park. And the trees are like overlapping you like you're in Rivendell. This gorgeous tree section in the run, and I'm slowing down a lot, and I can tell that this is where I can tell I might not hit 4, but that's not as disheartening as you might think it might be. It was just a fact that I realized, because at this point I just want to finish. And I was actually able to take a couple moments in this stretch of run to appreciate what I was doing, because it's this gorgeous part of the run, and I was all by myself, and I felt like I was all by myself. The nearest road is a long way away, and so I was in a really good space, and my knees weren't hurting, even though they were hurting in the downhill section just prior. I was able to get it back and start running without pain, and so this was a really good moment, and I figured I could get to the end, and that was really motivating. I break from Hermitage Park into North Hermitage, and I go around this big lake, and I take the extra big loop just to make sure I get the whole distance in. Oh, because that was another thing. We weren't totally sure if it was going to be the right distance. And I was pretty sure when I hit Rundle it would be the right distance, but I was making sure I was taking no shortcuts just to make sure that I hit the distance. And North Hermitage is a very popular dog walkers park. And so I'm running on this concrete path with dogs everywhere, and it's awesome because they're distractions, but I'm starting to be really miserable, and I'm sure people could see that. And I'm getting really tired, and I know that the death hill is next. I know that the hill that will be the hardest part of my run is next. And then I hit the hill. It's not as big as the first hill, but it's as steep. And it is a hill to grind out. And I'm going up, and I'm powering down. I'm powering down like crazy, but I just know I need to get to the top. And I know that if I get to the top, I'm going to the end. And then the wall hit me, and my leg starts to cramp, and I like limp a step, but I slammed a gel, and I had one left that I was going to use if I needed it later on, and I ended up using it. And I limp to the top of this hill, and it just, my quads would slowly start to cramp and then slowly release. And as soon as it did, I had the gel, and I got to the top, and I was miserable. And Brad and Rachel were there, and they were like, oh, good job, you're so close. They were being so positive. And I was just like, I need water. And so they give me the water. Brad races off to go to the car to get me second water like a kilometer later. And I'm on this flat section trying to work out these cramps. And it's slowly cramping and slowly releasing. And every time it would cramp a little bit harder. And so I have water there. I have water a kilometer later. And at that point, we were 6K out, and I knew that was my last water. It's really hard to access the rest of the path from a car. And so I knew that was my last chance for water. And so I have lots of water, not too much, but enough water there. And I'm on this flat section trying to get it back. And it takes me a long time to start feeling recovered cardiovascularly from the hill. And I never recover from the cramps. So for the last 6K, I'm up high through residential. And then it goes down to go under the Anthony Henday, and then back up to the golf course, and then down to the camp. And through that whole section, my quads started cramping more and then releasing, and then more and then releasing. And then my other quads started, and my calves. And my calves would have these sharp contractions and then let go. And these sharp contractions and then let go. And it was hell. It was horrible. It was so miserable. It was extremely painful, and it was extremely demotivating because I knew that I had to get through 6 more kilometers of this stuff. But for whatever reason, I'm 7K out from my goal, and I'm getting hit with this big wrinkle. I mean, the water breaking was nothing compared to what was happening right there. Colton actually was the only person that had the same thought that I had and verbalized it. He said, I wonder if not having that extra, 1.5 pounds of water on your back made it so that you could run further. And I don't know where the balance was with that. So I went through about 6 kilometers of hell, and then I met up with Lindsay. And Lindsay is like my sunshine. She is so much happier than I can ever be, and so we meet. And I've just come down this last section of hill, and I'm cramping, and I'm miserable, and she says, oh, you're doing so good. And my response is, don't talk to me. This is my wife, whom I love very much, and she has my son, whom I love, in the stroller, and she's just so happy to see me, and she's excited, and we're a kilometer away from this massive goal. We're at 41.2K, and she's so excited. And I say, don't talk to me. And so she goes, oh, sorry. And 3 seconds later, she's talking again. And I'm just so miserable. I ignore her. And then she kind of presses me some more. And I just say, seriously, don't talk to me. and so we bust through this last section. Rachel comes and she's cheering me on. And I can ignore her a little bit easier. And so I basically limp for the last kilometer up this really small incline, this slow incline to the top. And I can hear car horns. I thought it wasn't car horns, it was vuvuzelas. But then I see Gary, and I was like, oh, they invited my uncle, that's really cool. And then I see my grandma, who starts running with me. She's like 84 years old, and she's keeping up with me while I'm running for, I don't know how long it was until she decided to stop. And then I see all of my friends, and I see people that I hadn't talked to in a long time because of COVID, and they were there cheering me on and supporting me, and all I could think about was that I wanted to be done. And so I'm right at the end, and they pop off these confetti cannons that left confetti in the grass for a month, and they're blowing their horns and their noisemakers, and everyone's cheering. And then I see that I'm at my goal. I'm at 42.2 kilometers. I'm done. But the finish tape that they had for me was 100 meters ahead of, maybe not. It was like 40 meters ahead of me or something. And the hardest decision of that entire dang run was to not stop immediately right there and say, I'm done, guys, I did my distance. So I ran that meaningless 40 meters because I'm vain and everyone was watching me, and I had tape to run through, and it didn't even break, I don't think. It was too strong and I was too weak, and I ran through the tape and it kind of came with me. And I just remember stopping and putting my hands on my knees, and my dad coming up to me and saying, can I throw water on you? And I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, yeah, of course, like, go ahead. Because I was hot, I was really warm, and
I was exhausted and that water was going to feel really good. But he had asked me, and I didn't realize why. They dump water on me, and then people kind of quiet down, and they just kind of stop and they stare at me. And I'm standing there and I look around, and I didn't get it. I didn't know why my dad asked. I didn't know why people were just kind of staring at me. And from talking to everyone and piecing it together, I realized I looked miserable. I looked like I was not wanting to talk to anybody. And in my mind, I'm like, this is awesome. I can't believe everyone's here. I'm so happy. But I had nothing left in me at all. And so I would have been happy with whatever they did. Like my mom came up to me, she's like, can I hug you? Like my mom asked if she could hug me. I was like, yeah, of course. And it's just this bizarre thing where they were all trying to be really polite and respectful of me, which is amazing, and I love that. But it's because they had never seen me like that. They'd never seen me. This is the lowest that almost all of them, I mean, my family, my parents and siblings, and my wife have definitely seen me at lower points in my life. But none of my friends have. And it wasn't that was a low point for me, it was that I was drained physiologically and mentally, and so all they saw was this husk of an individual that was finished this giant goal, and they were so excited, but not sure if it was appropriate to be happy in front of someone so miserable. And of course it was okay. And so I was like, well, are we gonna eat? And so we went over and started eating, and people started perking up, and I started perking up, and maybe that was the catalyst to them perking up. I told Rachel I didn't want hoopla, and she freaking put a bunch of hoopla into the end of the run, and I'm happy that she did. But don't tell her. Because then I got to share that moment with a lot of my dear, dear friends. And Rachel's husband made me some amazing food, and they went to some of my favorite restaurants and got some amazing food because I was really deprived of calories at that point, as you might imagine. And so I ate a tremendous amount of food, and I got to talk with all these amazing people. Even though I was exhausted, I was still had this amazing moments. And one of my best friend's kids are holding signs, and they have signs that say, go for the hard and stuff like that. It's just it was so amazing. See, they were excited for me.
Dallas, how you feeling?
Better. I was really sore at the end. I'm stiff, but I'm moving.
Emotionally, how you doing?
Good. Better. Much better. I was a little grumpy boy at the end.
So, Lindsay?
Yes?
What do you think? He did it.
I'm really proud of him. I was actually almost in tears at the finish line, and seeing everyone there to support him was incredible. So, yeah.
Did he do better, worse, or the same as what you thought he would do?
Same. Yeah, I knew he did pretty well. So, and I had no doubt that he would finish it. So.
Is that good?
Burritos would be my favorite.
So, what did you think of today?
One of them is nicer.
Ask me later.
We'll just do an initial response now.
That's pretty good too. I don't know what to say.
What do you guys think of what Dallas did today?
I don't even understand. I don't even understand how he does it. It's incredible.
It's pretty inspirational to go from, like, I don't know, he doesn't like running, and he's gonna just do a marathon. Yes. It's pretty inspirational, and I love that my kids have thought of it, that when they are doing something hard, they're like, no, Dallas says go for the hard, and they go for it. So it's been awesome. It's trickled down to our family. So yeah.
That's awesome.
My heart's so happy to see so many people here to support him. It's so lovely.
Yeah. I'm so proud. I felt like crying. I'm so proud of him.
Anything else you want to say about Dallas
Nope.
or to Dallas?
Love him. Good job. Way to finish first. Way to push through. Love you.
What do you think of what Dallas did today?
Dallas, my first grandchild. I am so proud of you. And this was such a fun party. Thanks, Ray.
Good work. I doubted you every step of the way, but you pulled through.
It is Runbelievable. If I was going to pick one word, that would be the word I use. Yeah.
David, what do you think?
Mostly because he told me to say that.
It was no super marathon, but it was pretty good.
It was an ultra.
I thought he gave it his best, and so I was like, Jason, tell me what go for the hard means
Yeah.
to do. And he's like, well, with COVID going on, and starts talking about that. I was like, okay, what do you think?
And since then, I've put on about 10 pounds because I kept eating like I was training for a marathon. But I haven't stopped running. I missed 2 days because I got really preoccupied with other things. But other than these 2 days that I had to make up the day later, I've ran every day that I said I would. Big things in that regard. I ran my sister's first half marathon with her in the winter of all things, and she's now on the bandwagon big time and running like crazy. And that's probably even more important to me, you know, that other people are doing it. And now we're hoping to do Runbelievable 2021 and get anyone that wants to push themselves in on this idea. Because it was hard, but it was, oh my goodness, worth it. And I'm going to do it again next year, no question. You know, and watching the change in everything in my sister, even personality, it has been absolutely incredible. So this whole experience has been Runbelievable. This whole experience has been unbelievable. And the fact that it's not done either, that this is a continuing part of the process, the fact that self-improvement is never done. It's always something that you need to focus on, something you need to continue doing, something that you can put in your life to improve it is incredible. And when my running started going downhill because school and work started exploding in September, yeah, my quality of life went down. Coming back to running and being active and having routine, having structure in your life, it makes your life better. It makes it so much better. Even though it sucks to get off the couch and go run, it makes your life better. And I think that's it. That's just it. If you want to improve your life, you got to do things that are hard. If you want to have an easier life, you have to do things that are hard. That's it.
So, Runbelievable 2021, are you running?
I will be supportive in some way.
Will you join the movement?
I don't know. That is yet to be determined.
Runbelievable 2021, will you run?
No. No, I will not run. So, but I appreciate you asking. That's really nice. My nose was itchy for the last 30 seconds or more, and I was pretty
Now that's mental resiliency.
This may not make it in either, but I've been having some poops. I hope I don't have to deal with that tomorrow, because I don't know what I'm gonna do.